Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing amazing and ready for some action. Today, we're diving into Swordland Showdown in Kingshot, and I'm going to share powerful strategies that will help you dominate the battlefield and secure that sweet victory. But before we unleash the tips, let's start with the basics. Swordland Showdown is a 1-hour PvP event where two alliances face off to capture and hold special facilities. These facilities generate relic points, and the alliance with the most points, when the clock runs out, wins. This event happens once every 2 weeks, always on Sunday, so mark your calendars. To participate, your alliance must be ranked in the top 20 on the Alliance Power Leaderboard before the event begins. Alliances can register up to 2 legions, but rewards and rankings are based on Legion 1's battle result. Each legion can have 30 combatants and 10 substitutes, and members cannot be in both legions. Alliance leaders, or R4 officers, handle registration, while matchmaking is based on the troop power of your top 25 registered players, along with win rates and chosen time slots. A minimum of 15 registrations is needed to dispatch a legion. And here's a quick myth buster. Unequipping hero gear does not give you weaker opponents, so don't waste your time trying it. The battle takes place in 3 phases. Phase 1 is a fight for control over Sanctum, Abbey, Bell Tower, and the Royal Stables. Phase 2 begins 12 minutes in, unlocking the Sword Showdown, Hall of Reformation, and the Mercenary Camp. Finally, Phase 3 introduces Undersellers, which appear randomly across the map. Players can gather these and earn personal relic points. There are 11 buildings in total, and they fall into different categories. Buff buildings give you strong advantages. The Bell Tower reduces control time for facilities. The Royal Stables reduce teleport cooldown. The Mercenary Camp weakens enemy attack and defense. And the Hall of Reformation boosts troop attack while reducing incoming damage. While buff buildings don't generate many relic points, their effects can decide the match. The Abbey provides moderate relic points. The Sanctum generates a high number of relic points and is worth targeting early, and the Sword Shrine is the core building, producing the most relic points, making it the single most valuable structure to hold. In Swordland Showdown, there are 2 roles. Attackers are your strongest players, responsible for burning enemy cities and eliminating threats. Defenders are your mid-tier players and joiners, whose main focus is holding buildings so they can't be soloed. At the start, your number 1 goal is first occupation of as many buildings as possible. This alone can give 26,400 relic points in Phase 1, an enormous early lead. In the opening minutes, focus on Royal Stables to help attackers teleport quickly, Sanctum for its high relic point value, Bell Tower to reduce control time, and Abbey for extra points and support. Attackers should take buildings, then pass them to defenders to hold, while they move on to burn cities and clear enemies. When Phase 2 begins, the strongest attacker should teleport to Sword Shrine and garrison their main march. Joiners should fill every building to prevent solos. The Sword Shrine offers 9,000 first occupation relic points, which is massive. However, if the building is heavily contested, focus instead on holding both Sanctums and other strong point generators. If the enemy is too strong and you're getting kicked out early, shift to a different plan. Go for first occupations of as many buildings as possible, then focus on holding only key ones, Royal Stables and both Sanctums. In Phase 2, try for Sword Shrine's first occupation, and if you can't get it, grab the Mercenary Camp to weaken the enemy. In the last 5 to 10 minutes, your strongest attacker should hand off their building to a mid-tier player and start rallying enemy buildings to steal relic points. Watch for enemy whales who panic and teleport away from their holdings. This is your chance to solo vulnerable buildings. Rally every enemy building you can, drain their points, and push for Sword Shrine in the final moments. This can completely erase the points gap and secure the win. With this strategy, you're not just playing hard, you're playing smart, striking at the exact moment the enemy thinks you've given up. If you're a free-to-play player or a mid-tier fighter, avoid teleporting right next to the buildings. Instead, stay safely in your zone and garrison your troops from there, or position yourself just outside the enemy's line of sight. This way, the big spending whales won't notice you and burn you down before you can contribute. Here's another smart trick. Open the leaderboard section and leave the battlefield for about 12 minutes. When you come back, your troops will be completely healed and ready to jump right back into the fight. And that's the complete strategy for Swordland Showdown. If I find even better tactics, I'll share them in my Discord, link in the description. There's only so much we can cover in a single guide, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and follow along with my other guides to boost your growth in Kingshot. Until then, peace out and enjoy the gameplay highlights.